Your body doesn't wake you at 3 a.m. by accident. Not once, not twice, not every single night for months on end. Studies show adults over 60 experience 3 a.m. awakenings at a rate 40% higher than younger adults. Most people blame a full bladder, or stress, or just getting older. But chronobiologists say something far more specific is happening inside your body at that exact hour. Something measurable, something your doctor probably hasn't mentioned. That was the assumption millions of people carried for decades. By the time researchers mapped the precise hormonal cascade that peaks between 1 and 3 a.m., the picture looked nothing like aging. It looked like a warning system. This script names the real biological triggers behind that 3 a.m. wake-up call and what ignoring them could cost you. Every cell in your body runs on a 24-hour schedule, not approximately, precisely. This is your circadian rhythm, and it governs everything from body temperature to hormone release to when your liver shifts into high gear. For most of human history, this clock ran quietly in the background. Nobody noticed it. Nobody needed to. It simply ran, ticking through its cycles the way a well-maintained engine runs beneath the hood of a car you never think to open. The rhythm was invisible because it was working. It was only when it started to fail that anyone began to pay attention. But here is where the story gets specific. Around the age of 60, the architecture of sleep begins to change. The deep, slow-wave stages that once anchored the night become shorter, lighter, easier to break. The internal clock doesn't disappear, it shifts. And that shift has consequences that show up at a very particular hour in a very particular way, with a consistency that stops feeling like coincidence the moment you understand what is actually driving it. The shift is not random. It is not inevitable. It is the product of specific biological systems falling out of sync with each other in a sequence that researchers have now mapped with uncomfortable precision. Chronobiology research confirmed by 2026 identifies 3 a.m. as a documented peak window for cortisol activity in adults over 60. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. In younger bodies, the early morning cortisol surge happens gradually, quietly, without pulling anyone out of sleep. The rise is gentle. The nervous system absorbs it without registering alarm. Aging bodies amplify that same surge into something the nervous system cannot sleep through. The signal that was once a whisper becomes a shout, and that shout arrives at the same hour, in the same dark room, with the same disorienting certainty, night after night. Dr. Emily Vargas of the National Institute on Aging describes these 3 a.m. awakenings as a physiological alert system, not a malfunction, a signal. The body isn't broken, it's communicating. The question is whether anyone is listening, and the first message it sends involves an organ most people never think about after dark. If you had asked anyone in mainstream Western medicine about liver activity during sleep back in 1995, they would have told you the liver rests at night like everything else. They had no idea. It is 2 a.m. The house is dark. The body is still. The bedroom is quiet enough to hear the faint hum of the refrigerator 2 rooms away. The sheets are cool. The breathing is slow. From the outside, everything looks like rest. But inside, one of the largest organs in the human body is running at full capacity. The liver doesn't sleep. Between 1 and 3 a.m., both traditional Chinese medicine and modern chronobiology identify this window as the liver's peak detoxification period. This isn't ancient folklore dressed up in modern language. Researchers tracking hepatic enzyme activity have confirmed that liver metabolic output follows a precise circadian rhythm, with its most intensive processing concentrated in the early morning hours. The liver is filtering blood, breaking down hormones, neutralizing toxins accumulated across the previous day. It is, in every measurable sense, working the night shift. While the rest of the body rests, the liver is running a full industrial operation in the dark. For a 35-year-old, this process runs efficiently and silently. The liver handles its workload, the body stays asleep, and nobody is the wiser. But here is the detail that everyone missed at the time. After 60, liver efficiency begins a documented decline. Hepatic blood flow decreases by roughly 35 to 40% between the ages of 25 and 65, according to data published in the journal Clinical Pharmacokinetics. Enzyme production slows. The liver's ability to process its nightly workload within that narrow 1 to 3 a.m. window becomes compromised. The backlog builds, and the body responds to that backlog the only way it knows how. When the liver is under stress, it triggers a cascade of physiological responses that are anything but subtle. Internal body temperature rises. You can feel it as a faint warmth spreading from the core outward. Not enough to call a fever, but enough to make the sheets feel heavier than they should. The skin at the back of the neck grows slightly damp. The jaw tightens without any conscious instruction to do so. Adrenaline output increases. The nervous system shifts from its parasympathetic rest state into something closer to alert, not fully awake, not fully asleep. Suspended in that brittle, restless zone where the smallest signal pulls you to the surface. A car passing outside, a creak in the hallway, the soft exhale of a sleeping partner. Any of it is enough, and then you're staring at the ceiling, again, at 3 a.m., again. Dr. Robert Klein, author of Sleep After 60, has called liver overload one of the most underdiagnosed causes of sleep disruption in older adults. Not stress, not prostate issues, not anxiety, the liver. Quietly overwhelmed, quietly signaling, and almost universally overlooked by the patients experiencing it and the physicians treating them. The organ doing the most work at night is the one nobody thinks to examine when the nights stop working. The compounding factors make this worse. Alcohol is the obvious one. Even moderate consumption, a glass of wine with dinner, extends the liver's processing window by hours. What the liver hasn't finished metabolizing by midnight becomes active work during that critical 1 to 3 a.m. window. Processed foods loaded with artificial additives, preservatives, and industrial seed oils add to the detox burden. Certain common medications, including statins, acetaminophen taken regularly, and some blood pressure drugs, are hepatically metabolized, meaning the liver must process them on top of everything else. For a younger liver with full enzymatic capacity, this is manageable. For a liver operating at 60% efficiency, it is not. This decision seemed small at the time. It wasn't. The nightly glass of wine, the processed snack before bed, the second acetaminophen, each one individually negligible. Collectively, they push an already taxed organ past the threshold it can quietly manage. And the result surfaces at the same time every night with the same jarring, disorienting wakefulness that feels random but is anything but. There is a specific physiological mechanism worth naming here. When the liver's detox process stalls or overloads, bile production can become irregular. Bile is stored in the gallbladder and released to aid digestion, but its production is also tied to circadian rhythms. Disrupted bile flow creates a feedback loop of low-grade internal discomfort, not painful enough to identify, not sharp enough to name, but activating enough to interrupt sleep. There is a faint nausea that never quite announces itself, a restlessness in the torso that has no clear location. You don't wake up knowing why, you just wake up. Simultaneously, the liver's role in blood glucose regulation means that a stressed liver is also a liver that may be mismanaging overnight glucose levels. That connection leads directly into the next biological trigger. But the liver story isn't finished yet. Because what researchers began noticing in longitudinal sleep studies wasn't just that liver stress caused 3 a.m. waking. It was that the people who woke most consistently at that hour, night after night, showed measurable differences in their morning inflammatory markers. C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, the quiet biochemical fingerprints of a system under sustained stress. Not crisis level, not the kind of numbers that trigger alarm bells in a routine blood panel, but elevated, persistently, quietly elevated. The kind of elevation that accumulates meaning over months, not days. The kind that a single snapshot blood test will miss entirely, but that a pattern of results over time begins to reveal with uncomfortable clarity. The same liver that built the body's nightly detox system was about to destroy it. It is 2:47 a.m. The house is completely still. Somewhere in the dark, a 63-year-old body is running out of fuel. This is the moment nobody talks about, the moment the blood sugar floor gives way. Blood glucose levels follow a predictable rhythm across the day. They rise after meals, they fall during fasting, and somewhere in the early morning hours between 2 and 4 a.m., they hit their lowest point of the entire 24-hour cycle. For most people under 50, this dip is manageable. The body compensates quietly. The liver releases a measured pulse of stored glucose. The brain registers nothing unusual. Nobody wakes up. Nobody notices. Life continues. But after 60, the rules change. The same metabolic machinery that handled these dips for decades starts losing its precision. Insulin sensitivity shifts. Glycogen stores in the liver, the emergency glucose reserves the body draws on during the night, become less reliable. The buffer zone shrinks, and that predictable early morning dip becomes something else entirely. It becomes a crash. What comes next is the part that still doesn't make sense. The brain detects the drop first. It always does. The brain is the most glucose-dependent organ in the human body, consuming roughly 20% of all the body's energy despite representing only 2% of its mass. When blood sugar falls below a critical threshold, typically somewhere around 70 milligrams per deciliter, though the individual threshold varies, the brain does not wait politely for morning. It fires an emergency signal. Cortisol floods the bloodstream. Adrenaline follows. The liver gets the message and begins dumping stored glucose back into circulation. Heart rate climbs, breathing quickens, the chest tightens with a pressure that has no name and no obvious source. The body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And the person in the bed wakes up, heart pounding, drenched in sweat, flooded with a formless, sourceless anxiety they cannot explain. The room is dark. Nothing has changed. There is no threat visible anywhere. But the body is certain something is wrong, and it is not going to let you sleep until it has been heard. They lie there in the dark, convinced something is wrong, unsure what it is, unable to go back to sleep. They check the clock. It reads 3:04 a.m. They assume it is stress. They assume it is age. They assume it will pass. You'd think someone would have said something. Nobody did. Here is what makes this particularly dangerous for the over 60 population. The symptoms of a nocturnal blood sugar crash are almost perfectly designed to be misattributed. The racing heart gets blamed on anxiety. The sweating gets blamed on menopause or on the room being too warm. The inability to return to sleep gets blamed on insomnia. The morning exhaustion that follows gets blamed on poor sleep quality. Every symptom has a more comfortable explanation. And so the real cause goes unexamined. Sometimes for years, the body keeps sending the same signal. The signal keeps being filed under the wrong heading. Diabetics and pre-diabetics are the most obvious candidates for this pattern. For someone managing type 2 diabetes with insulin or certain oral medications, nocturnal hypoglycemia is a documented, recognized risk. Endocrinologists watch for it. Patients are warned about it. But here is the part that catches most people off guard. You do not need a diabetes diagnosis for this to happen to you. Non-diabetic nocturnal hypoglycemia is real. It is underdiagnosed, and it is more common after 60 than most people realize. The trigger in many cases is sitting on the dinner plate. A late-night meal heavy in refined carbohydrates, white rice, pasta, bread, sweetened desserts causes a sharp spike in blood glucose. The pancreas responds by releasing insulin. The insulin does its job. Blood sugar comes down. But in some individuals, particularly those with any degree of insulin resistance, the insulin response overshoots. Blood sugar drops further than it should. And by 3 a.m., when the body is already at its natural glucose low point, the overcorrection from that 9 p.m. bowl of pasta has compounded the problem. The floor drops out entirely. This is called reactive hypoglycemia. It is not a rare condition. It is not a dramatic medical emergency in most cases. But repeated night after night, it is a signal, a persistent biochemical alarm that the metabolic system is under strain. A body that wakes itself up at 3 a.m. to manage a blood sugar crisis is a body that is working too hard to maintain basic stability. That is not normal. That is not simply aging. That is a warning. The turning point comes when the pattern becomes undeniable. One night of waking with a pounding heart is easy to dismiss. 2 nights is a coincidence. But when it is the same time, the same symptoms, the same formless dread, night after night for weeks, something shifts. The body is not being dramatic. The body is being precise. It is repeating the same message in the same language at the same hour because it has not yet been understood. The consequences of ignoring this pattern extend well beyond disrupted sleep. Repeated nocturnal cortisol and adrenaline surges, triggered by blood sugar crashes, place sustained stress on the cardiovascular system. Blood pressure climbs during these episodes. The heart works harder. The arterial walls absorb the pressure of each surge, night after night, in a way that does not announce itself until it does. And over months and years, that cumulative strain accumulates in ways that do not show up on a single routine checkup. It accumulates in the spaces between appointments, in the quiet hours when nobody is monitoring anything. The person who has been waking at 3 a.m. for 6 months, attributing it to stress or age, may be 6 months further down a road they did not know they were on. Your body would look back on this moment and wish it had made a different call. But that's getting ahead of the story. It is 3:11 a.m. The cortisol is already moving. It has been moving for nearly an hour. Nobody gave it permission. This is the third act. This is where the system turns on itself. To understand what is happening, you have to understand what cortisol is supposed to do. Under normal circumstances, cortisol follows a precise and elegant daily schedule. It sits low through the night, allowing the body to rest, repair, and consolidate memory. Then, somewhere between 6 and 8 in the morning, it begins to rise, sharply, deliberately. This is called the cortisol awakening response, and it is one of the most important hormonal events in the human body. It primes the immune system. It mobilizes energy. It sharpens cognition. It is, in the most literal sense, the body's internal alarm clock, the biological mechanism that prepares you to face the day before you have even opened your eyes. When it works correctly, it is invisible. When it stops working correctly, it becomes the loudest thing in the room. Now, the body could have stopped there. It didn't. In a healthy, well-regulated system, that cortisol peak arrives at dawn and does its job cleanly. But chronic stress changes the schedule. Inflammation changes the schedule. Adrenal fatigue, the slow grinding depletion of the adrenal glands after months or years of sustained pressure, changes the schedule. And in a growing number of adults over 60, the cortisol peak is no longer arriving at dawn. It is arriving at 3 a.m., 4 hours early, in the middle of the night, in a body that is supposed to be resting. The real question is what happened behind closed doors. The answer, increasingly, is that the adrenal system has been quietly dysregulating for years, not dramatically, not in ways that show up on a standard blood panel, but persistently. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the command chain that governs cortisol release, has been recalibrated by accumulated stress, poor sleep, chronic low-grade inflammation, and the hormonal shifts that accompany aging. And at some point, the recalibration crosses a threshold. The body's internal clock starts firing the cortisol alarm 4 hours too early. The dawn signal arrives at midnight's edge. The preparation for waking begins while the body still has hours of repair work left to do. The Journal of Geriatric Sleep Medicine published findings in February of 2024 that should have made headlines. Researchers examining sleep architecture in adults over 60 found a 40% higher incidence of significant cortisol spikes occurring specifically at 3 a.m. compared to younger adult control groups. 40%. That is not a marginal statistical footnote. That is a pattern. That is a generation of older adults being biochemically jolted awake in the middle of the night by a hormone that is supposed to be helping them. And most of them have no idea that the hormone is the problem. And the consequences of that misfire are not subtle. Elevated cortisol at 3 a.m. does not simply wake you up. It activates the full stress response cascade. Heart rate increases. Blood pressure rises. The immune system shifts into an inflammatory posture. The brain, flooded with a hormone that is chemically indistinguishable from the signal it receives during a genuine threat, begins generating racing thoughts. Worry, rumination, the mental replay of unresolved problems, the 3 a.m. spiral that millions of people know intimately and cannot explain. The ceiling becomes a screen. Every unfinished conversation, every unpaid bill, every unanswered question gets projected onto it in the dark. The mind moves fast and finds no exit. They lie awake for an hour, sometimes 2. The thoughts will not stop. The body will not settle. And by the time they finally drift back to sleep, it is nearly 5 a.m. and the alarm is set for 6:30. The sleep they do get in those final 90 minutes is fragmented, shallow, and biochemically disrupted. They wake exhausted. They push through the day on caffeine and willpower. They go to bed that night already depleted, and the cycle begins again. Dr. Elena Vargas, a specialist in endocrinology and aging, has been documenting this pattern in her clinical practice for over a decade. Her observation, published in a 2023 review of hormonal changes in adults over 60, is unambiguous. This hormonal dysregulation, she writes, becomes more pronounced, not less, with age. The adrenal system does not self-correct without intervention. The cortisol clock does not reset on its own. Without deliberate, targeted support, the pattern deepens. The 3 a.m. waking becomes more frequent. The morning exhaustion becomes more severe. The cognitive fog that follows becomes harder to shake. Tasks that once required no effort begin to require concentration. Words that were once immediate begin to arrive late. Names that lived at the front of the mind begin to hide somewhere further back. This is the point of no return. Not a single dramatic event, not a diagnosis or a crisis, just a slow incremental drift away from metabolic stability, measured in disrupted nights and exhausted mornings, accumulating quietly over months and years. And here is what makes the cortisol story particularly insidious. The very stress that dysregulates the cortisol rhythm is amplified by the sleep deprivation that the dysregulation causes. It is a closed loop. Chronic stress shifts the cortisol peak to 3 a.m. The 3 a.m. cortisol spike destroys sleep quality. Destroyed sleep quality increases cortisol levels the following day. Elevated daytime cortisol makes the adrenal dysregulation worse, and the cycle tightens. Each revolution of the loop pulls the walls a little closer. Each sleepless night makes the next one more likely. The system that was designed to protect the body has become the mechanism of its own unraveling. The body that began this process under manageable stress, a difficult year at work, a health scare, a period of grief, is now running a self-sustaining biochemical feedback loop that has nothing to do with the original stressor. The stressor may be long gone. The cortisol clock remains broken. The adrenal glands keep firing at the wrong hour. The liver keeps struggling through its backlog. The blood sugar keeps crashing through the floor. And the person in the bed keeps waking at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering why they can't just sleep. The original wound has healed. The alarm it triggered has not stopped ringing. This is the fall. This is the reckoning. The system that was supposed to protect the body has become the threat. Everything the adrenal system had built was about to work against them. The body was never broken. It was always trying to tell you something. What changed permanently because of this story?